different series clones, these tokens are effectively a small packet of data that can contain that microprogram is called a smart contract, a name that is so comically full of itself that I feel like it's misleading to even call them that, but I have to be forced to conceptualize the role of these things as the unity of programming and law. The phrase code is law gets bandied about as an aphorism, and it's just so full of holes that we're going to be spending the next forever talking about it. Before we move into that, this is the root of it. There is a tremendous disconnect between what NFT advocates say they do and what they actually do. But, and this is very important, both the claimed functionality and the actual functionality are both bad. It's all broken, none of it works well, so the idea of it becoming the norm is terrible. But the prospect of what the world would look like if all the mythologizing and overpromising came true also super sucks. The end goal of this infant machine is the financialization of everything. Any benefits of digital uniqueness end up being a quirk, a necessary precondition of turning everything into a stock market. There's nothing particularly offensive underpinning the concept of digital collection. NFTs exist to lend credibility and functionality to the cryptocurrencies that they exist on top of. Okay. Code is law. Now, what that little smart contract program does is up to the token creator. It can be a relatively sophisticated applet that allows the user to execute various commands, or it can be a plain hypertext link to a static URL of an image, or anything in between. Most are a lot closer to static URLs than they are to functional programs. This is in part because the thing that NFTs have become synonymous with are digital artworks, but really what the token represents is arbitrary. It can be a video game item, a permission slip, a subscription, a domain name, a virus that steals all your digital stuff, or a combination of all of those. Well, the concept has been floating around since 2015 when the framework was thrown together in a day during a hackathon, and the first Ethereum implemented tokens were minted in 2017. For the mainstream, the story starts in the spring of 2021, following a string of high-priced sales of tokens minted by digital artist Beeple, culminating in a $69 million sale of a collage of Beeple's work in March via old money auction house Christie's. This high-profile sale triggered a media frenzy and an online gold rush as various minor internet celebrities raced to cash in on the trend, hoping to be the next to cash out big. Over the course of about 6 weeks, the ecosystem burned through just about every relevant meme possible. Lena Morris popularized on Reddit as overly attached girlfriend sold the original screen grab to Emirati girl, sold the NFT of the original disaster girl photograph to Fard for also $400,000. Kyle Craven sold the original Bad Luck Brian photo for $36,000 to anonymous buyer at A. Nyan Cat sold for almost $600,000 with multiple variants also selling for six figures. Alice at Harvard sold Creepy Chan 1 and 2 for $67,000 and $83,000 respectively, also both to Fard. In addition to these high-profile sales of $600,000 with multiple variants also selling for six figures, Alice at Harvard sold Creepy Chan 1 and 2 for $67,000 and $83,000 respectively, also both to Fard. In addition to these high-profile sales of things that were already popular, whale buyers like Fard were dropping 4- and 5-figure sales onto a random assortment of other artworks. Corporations and individuals auctioned off NFTs representing intangible, non-transferable concepts like the first tweet or the first text message. Cryptocurrency evangelists jumped at every opportunity to proselytize this new, bold, revolutionary marketplace that would free artists from the yoke of the gig economy and provide buyers with an immutable record of ownership of authenticated artwork stored on an eternal distributed machine. You could be holding the next generation's Picasso. Artists could continue to earn passive revenue from secondary sales. Imagine what it'll be worth in 5 years. This created an air of absolute mania, as it seemed like anything could be the golden ticket. Digital artists, especially those working with media like generative art that's difficult to monetize via conventional channels like physical prints, raced into the space and, on the whole, lost a lot of money. Critics began questioning what it was that was actually being bought and sold. Copyright, commercial permission, a digital file, bragging rights? In a huge number of cases, the answer wasn't very clear, and even the sellers, caught in the promise of a payday, weren't altogether sure what they had even sold. Tons of the tokens tokens did little more than point to images stored on normal servers readily accessible via HTTP, meaning the bought assets would be just as vulnerable to link rot as anything else. Some pointed to images stored on peer-to-peer IPFS servers, which are more resistant to link rot, as, similar to a torrent, it only requires that someone keep the file active somewhere, rather than requiring the original server to stay up. But as millions of dead torrents prove, that's still a far cry from the eternal storage solution that evangelists were claiming. The images were stored and delivered the same way as any other image on the internet, easily saved or duplicated simply by virtue of the fact that in order for your computer to display an image, it needs to download it. Claims of digital scarcity apply only to the token itself, not the thing the token signified. More than that, there was no cryptographic relationship between the image and the tokens. The image associated with a token could be easily altered or replaced if the person with access to the server that the image was hosted on just changed file names, making the relationship between the two tenuous and flimsy in a way that undermined the claims that this was somehow a more durable, reliable way of transacting digital art. There was also no proof of authenticity, no confirmation that the person minting the artwork was the person who created the artwork. This is a pretty handy encapsulation of the way that blockchain fails to solve the most common problems with fraud, which tend to start with bad data going into a system at the input, not data being altered midstream. Artists who complained about this system, the images were stored and delivered the same way as any other image on the internet, easily saved or duplicated simply by virtue of the fact that in order for your computer to display an image, it needs to download it. Claims of digital scarcity apply only to the token itself, not the thing the token signified. More than that, there was no cryptographic relationship between the image and the tokens. The image associated with a token could be easily altered or replaced if the person with access to the server that the image was hosted on just changed file names, making the relationship between the two tenuous and flimsy in a way that undermined the claims that this was somehow a more durable, reliable way of transacting digital art. There was also no proof of authenticity, no confirmation that the person minting the artwork was the person who created the artwork. This is a pretty handy encapsulation of the way that blockchain fails to solve the most common problems with fraud, which tend to start with bad data going into a system at the input, not data being altered midstream. Artists who complained about this system, which clearly incentivized impersonating popular artists, including deceased artists, were told that it was their fault for not jumping in sooner, that if they had bought in and minted their stuff first, then it would have been easy to prove the forgeries. Because evangelists don't see this as a tool, as a market that may or may not fit into an artist's business. They see it as the future. So failure to participate isn't a business decision, it's just a mistake. They're terrible people. All told, the frenzy collapsed pretty quickly. By June, the market had already receded by about 90%, which incidentally just further incentivized the low-effort process of minting other people's artwork to the point that art platform DeviantArt implemented an extremely well-received feature that scans several popular NFT marketplaces for matching images. The output of that is extremely depressing. Not to labor the point, but reposting digital art without attribution is nothing new. Profiting off someone else's art is also nothing new. All that's new is NFTs represent a high-energy marketplace with an irrational pricing culture where the main buyer is easily flattered and not particularly discerning. The potential payoff is extremely high, much, much higher than a bootleg Redbubble store. The consequences border on non-existent, and the market is clearly in an untenable state, so there's an incentive to get in at as low a cost as possible before it collapses. Hence, the absolute plague of art theft. Even the argument that artists could make passive revenue off secondary sales turned out to have a lot of caveats attached. One, the smart contract for the token needs to have a function that defines royalties, so anyone who minted a token based off of hype, making it sound like an inherent function of the system, was out of luck. And two, the token doesn't know what a sale is and can't differentiate between being sold and being transferred. So it's actually the marketplace that informs the token, you're being sold, and collects the royalties. End result, royalties are easily bypassed simply by using a marketplace that doesn't collect royalties or uses a different format of royalty collection that's incompatible with the function the token uses. While a few sellers, legitimate and otherwise, made off with undeniably big paydays, hundreds of thousands of artists bought in only to find that there wasn't a new, revolutionary, highly trafficked audience of digital art collectors. Instead, there was a closed market dealing in casino chips, where the primary winners were those already connected, who already had the means to get the attention of the whales in the media, a market where participation required buying into a cryptocurrency at a rapidly fluctuating price in order to pay the minting costs to post the work where it would sit unsold. This left those artists in the lurch, where they had to choose between just eating the losses or attempting to convince their existing audience to buy in as well. The people who actually won were the people with large holdings of cryptocurrency, specifically Ethereum, which mediated the vast majority of these big-ticket purchases. David Gerard, author of Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain, summarized it on his blog very succinctly as such. NFTs are entirely for the benefit of the crypto grifters. The only purpose the artists serve is as aspiring suckers to pump the concept of crypto, and of course to buy cryptocurrency to pay for minting NFTs. Sometimes the artist gets some crumbs to keep them pumping the concept of crypto. The rush benefits them in two ways. First, the price of Ether itself goes up directly from the spike in demand. Between January and May, the price of Ether rose from $700 to $4,000. And second, there's new actual buyers who aren't just trading Bitcoin for Tether for Ether and back again, but are buying in with dollars, providing the whole system with the liquidity needed for whales to actually cash out. This arrangement, needing to buy a highly volatile coin from people who paid far, far less for it in order to participate in a market that they control, is why people reflexively describe the whole arrangement as a scam. If you buy in at $4,000 and compete against people who bought in at $4, you're the sucker. It reveals the basic truth that these aren't marketplaces, they're casinos. And indeed, even through all the rhetoric of protecting artists and whatnot, was the ever-present specter of the gamble. Whatever you buy now might be worth hundreds of times more later. Constantly invoked is the opposite proposition of the bad deal. What if you had been the person who bought in at $4? Let's take a closer look at that eye-watering $69 million Beeple sale. Independent journalist Amy Castor has done an enviable job running down the details here in her piece, Metacoven, the mystery Beeple art buyer and his NFT DeFi scheme. But to summarize it along in short of her notes, the buyer is a crypto entrepreneur named Vignesh Sundaresan who purchased the piece to boost the reputation and value of his own crypto investment scheme, MetaPurse, and MetaPurse's own token, B20, which Beeple owns 2% of the total supply of. Following the Christie's sale, the reported value of B20 went from 36 cents per token to $23. And that's just the anatomy of a single sale. The very obvious conclusion observers reached was that none of this is about the art at all, but the speculative value. Not what it's worth to you, but what it'll potentially be worth in the future to someone else. It's not a market, it's a casino, gambling on the receipt for an image or video that otherwise infinitely digitally replicable. The thing itself is immaterial as long as it can make a line go up. This is the essence of the market and a microcosm of what evangelists imagine they want to see as the future, the financialization of everything. The frenzied market around old Reddit memes was doomed from the start. There's a finite supply of meaningful originals, so to keep this thing going, to keep the line going up, you need something more. Something less tied to anything specific.
Sir, the Lambo's ready.
What? In the months since the initial craze, the marketplace had mutated. The it thing was no longer memes or digital works from established artists, but character profiles from large, procedurally generated collections with names like CryptoPunks, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Lazy Lions, Cool Cats, Ether Gals, Gator World, Baby Llama Club, Magic Mushroom Club, Rogue Society Bot, and Crypto Chicks. These were notable for, again, commanding utterly irrational prices, seemingly completely decoupled from any legitimate or legal transaction, and being generally extremely fugly. This surge generated an immediately adversarial relationship between the buyers, who touted them as both evidence of their extravagant wealth and their foresight into the future of digital economies, and pretty much everyone else. A very common response to anyone using one of these profile pics or bragging about their purchase became saving and reposting the image in reply, or even changing profile pics to match. Spurred by a speculative tweet from Twitter developers suggesting that they were working on an NFT verification system, Twitter users broadly rallied at the opportunity to immediately identify people that it was okay to bully. Tweets from within the cryptosphere started leaking out. Things like Santiago Santos tweeting things like NFTs equal Identity 2.0. Can't remember the last time I used my pick on the left. Emphasis on physical traits, genetic lottery, prone to bias and prejudice, identity by choice, unique and digitally scarce, representation of values and beliefs. Of course, what Santiago was leaving out was that he had paid the equivalent of $171,000 US for that profile pic, which probably gives him some incentive to really commit to it as something interesting and special, even though using a non-representational image as a profile pic. For about 6 years, my profile on the Dungeons & Dragons forums was a stock photo of a cabbage, so not really breaking new ground here. Greg Eisenberg sat at his computer and decided to bang out, most people who make fun of NFTs own zero NFTs, have never minted an NFT, have never participated in a community, have never staked their NFTs, haven't built a top of an NFT project, have never earned an NFT playing a game, missed out on fake punks, cool cats, etc. A chain of logic implying that skeptics of the market are just uninformed, sore losers. Incidents like these led to the very accurate perception that the loudest voices in NFTs weren't very familiar with internet culture as a whole, weren't terribly smart in general, and were by and large coming at all this from the financial side, further supported by all of them having "tweets are not investment advice" in their Twitter bios. In short, the same people who made and bought Juicero. What is this?
Juicero.
It also laid bare that the conversations were inherently suspect. How can you ever trust the sincerity of someone telling you how awesome their $171,000 investment is when your persuasion stands to directly benefit them by potentially driving up the value of their investment portfolio? You've got to be extremely rich for $171,000 to not be an extremely sunk cost, and that's absolutely going to weigh on your mind and influence how you see the market. So for my part, I tweeted about several of these incidences and was in response hounded for days by annoying people with NFT profile pics who insisted that I just didn't get it. I wasn't just in unity. So I decided to go see the community. My experiment started with the Cool Cats Discord, one of the communities that I'd been assured was top of the pile. I joined, read back through days and days of conversation logs, watched the active conversations, and was generally unimpressed. It was at best unremarkable. A primary concern was still rooted in the monetary value of the tokens.
If you spend 1 million on a cat, it's not just for Twitter, and no one would be happy seeing someone mint another one later for free. That's why punks are at 120 ETH. Symbols, memes, there's the value.
What wasn't unremarkable is the way that I was immediately deluged by bots sending me invites to other discords. So between the spam I was receiving and the Cool Cats dedicated shill channel, I came up with an idea. For days now, I've been accepting every spam and Discord invite I receive, and it's getting dire. Stoner Cats, Oni Ronin, Magic Mushroom Club, NF Tits, The Humanoids, Ether Gals, Cool Cats, Senzu Seeds, Pro Camel Riders, Long Ween Club, Stick Humans, Bumping Uglies, World of Wojak, Gen Map, Dimes, Magic Marbles NFT, Beverly Hills Car Club, Cash Cows, Long Neck Cartel, Pug Force, Hood Punks, Gorilla Club, Alien Archives, Betting Buddhas, Fighting Turtle Club, The Iconimals, Basement Dwellers, Wizardman Jenkins, Cotty, Metamons, Crazy Skulls, Box Gang, Gym Punks, Uncovered, Nitro Punk, Crypto Bulls, Masquerade Massacre, Cat Colony, Skeleptees, Daffy Panda Ganging Up, Betting Kongs, Wolves of Wall Street, Happy Sharks, Teacup Pigs, Cool Llamas, Mad Carrot Gang, Barnyard Fashionistas, Soul Cities, Oink Club, Outlaw Punks, Crypto Astronauts, NFT World, Panda Paradise, Time Travelers, Cyberkongs, Party 8 Billionaire Club, J-Corps, Cryptocados, Meta Birds, and that's about as far as I got before more or less giving up and finally shutting off Discord DMs. Now, this is a fraction of what's out there, but I do think it's a pretty representative sample, and I learned a lot. For example, the basic psychological profile of the average buyer is someone who is tenuously middle class, socially isolated, and highly responsive to memes. They are someone who has very little experience with real businesses and production processes, thus are unlikely to be turned off by unrealistic claims about future returns. They are insecure about their lack of knowledge, and this makes them very susceptible to flattery, in particular being assured that the only reason for negativity is because critics just don't understand what they understand. Being tenuously middle class gives them enough disposable income to engage with a pretty expensive system, but also a very potent anxiety. For example, the basic psychological profile of the average buyer is someone who is tenuously middle class, socially isolated, and highly responsive to memes. They are someone who has very little experience with real businesses and production processes, thus are unlikely to be turned off by unrealistic claims about future returns. They are insecure about their lack of knowledge, and this makes them very susceptible to flattery, in particular being assured that the only reason for negativity is because critics just don't understand what they understand. Being tenuously middle class gives them enough disposable and this makes them very susceptible to flattery, in particular being assured that the only reason for negativity is because critics just don't understand what they understand. Being tenuously middle class gives them enough disposable income to engage with a pretty expensive system, but also a very potent anxiety about their financial future. It goes without saying that they're fixated on money and they principally understand the technology as a means of making money. Criticism of the system is typically met with confusion. Don't you want to make money? I also learned a lot about fraud and how to do it both on purpose and by accident. The term rug pull, with its derivations rug and rug, all to describe projects that made big promises but then took the money and ran, embedded themselves in my vocabulary extremely quickly. The market is just absolutely lousy with fraud and deception. Wash trading, where you sell something to your own sock puppets in order to lure in real buyers who think they're getting a good deal, is rampant. Market manipulation is so common and accepted that it's actually considered bad form if project leaders don't actively engage in it. Like, it's considered disrespectful to the buyers if the project leaders don't help them inflate the resale price. Also, and I really should not leave this merely implied, the art is bad, but not in any sort of interesting way. It's bad in a smoothed-over copycat way, a low-effort garbage dump from artists who have largely given up on having ideas or opinions. Derivative, lazy, ugly, hollow, and boring. The capacity for original thought long having been drained out of the illustrators kept in the employ and proximity of people who refuse to shut up about cryptocurrency, there is an overwhelming tendency to fall back on stale memes and self-flattery. A massive volume of cryptocurrency art ends up being art about cryptocurrency, transparent pandering to an audience that is either deeply stupid or easily pleased, and quite possibly both. Absent any artistic insight, the vacuum is instead filled to overflowing with references to Doge memes, Bitcoin, Ethereum, stonks, to the moon, buy the dip, good morning, and desperate pleas for senpai Elon Musk to notice them, all presented with the earnestness and authenticity of a pickle Rick bong. It's tempting with references to Doge memes, Bitcoin, Ethereum, stonks, to the moon, buy the dip, good morning, and desperate pleas for senpai Elon Musk to notice them, all presented with the earnestness and authenticity of a pickle Rick bong. It's tempting to say that my approach, accepting every spam invite, was a really flawed way to delve deeper, that obviously accepting invites from spam bots would mainly lead me into less stable projects. But surprisingly, no. I got just as much spam for successful projects as humanoids and NFT worlds as I did for rug pulls like crypto astronauts and hood punks. On the whole, if you just look at the pitch package and the sample product, there's very little material difference between a project that's going to sell out 10,000 tokens in 6 hours and one that's going to become a trash fire as the project leader has a nervous breakdown and burns them in 3 days post-launch after only selling 800 tokens. Party A Billionaire Club sold out, bringing in about $3.2 million, and are now flexing their wealth by partnering with other crypto projects like the 2 Chainz produced NFT cartoon show, The Red Ape Family, which is just really truly shows off the community's deep pockets and commitment to quality. Deep in their roadmap is the promise that they've Party A Billionaire Club sold out, bringing in about $3.2 million, and are now flexing their wealth by partnering with other crypto projects like the 2 Chainz produced NFT cartoon show, The Red Ape Family, which is just really truly shows off the community's deep pockets and commitment to quality. Deep in their roadmap is the promise that they will start production on an MMORPG, a claim that buyers are entirely faithful in. Crypto astronauts sold 1,262 of their 9,485 tokens, bringing in an impressive $375,000. But as nice as that number is, it's not remotely enough to even start proceeding on their plan to build a full-scale PvP-based MMO. Following the failed mint in October, the devs slowly went quiet, and then bit by bit, websites, social media accounts, and eventually the Discord itself all disappeared. Based off the ostensible product, why should one of these succeed and the other fail? The key distinction ultimately between a Party A Billionaire Club and a Crypto Astronauts is that PABC was already flush with cash and able to manufacture hype with high-priced giveaways and expensive advertising. Buying advertising space in Times Square, in particular, is a specific fixation. But running a 10-second ad every 8 minutes on one out-of-the-way billboard in Times Square isn't effective advertising, not externally. All it's really good for is internal propaganda, making insiders feel like the money that they've spent is buying credibility. And if you're in a speculative bubble, betting that someone down the line will buy you out for more than you bought in, credibility is worth everything in the world.
Most game devs would hesitate to post this to Twitter. They posted it to Times Square.
This is pervasive. Even in the most credibility is worth everything in the world.
Most game devs would hesitate to post this to Twitter. They posted it to Times Square.
This is pervasive. Even in the most established projects, ones that have been going for years, there's not really an underlying thing. These aren't fandoms in the way that you would experience them around a game or a TV show or a book. The product is pretty insubstantial, if not functionally non-existent. This is where these projects diverge significantly from the artworks that drove the speculative mania in the spring. They're not positioning themselves as art that's worth possessing for the art, as flimsy and illusory as that claim was, but as ongoing projects that you buy into. The purchase of a token is an abstracted version of buying early stock in a company, a venture capital style investment in promises, which is a very significant mutation. Okay, so what do these phantom companies claim to exist to do? Pretty much all of them promise direct financial returns in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes this is just a nebulous sense that the whole thing will go to the moon, meaning the value of the tokens will take off and thus early buyers will be able to resell for huge profits, or more direct, as the project leaders promise the formation of, effectively, an unofficial hedge fund investing a communal pool into other crypto products. Probably the funniest of all of these was Betting Kongs, which wanted to create an unregistered real money casino in which token holders would be explicitly part owners and also permitted to gamble in the casino that they owned.
Betting Kongs is not your ordinary NFT project. We aim to create passive income for our NFT owners by co-owning a casino with a profit split. Welcome to the white paper, fellow gamblers. Why are we doing this? To put it short, we love gambling, and we noticed how a lot of the operators out there are owned by large corporations who have no care for the community or the service they provide. We want to provide a project where everyone playing can be a co-owner of the place they're playing at and make money from it all.
Technically, so was a crack den.
Probably the best outcome for everyone here, if we're being honest. Some promise this in the
same
form of
thing
a more
to you
conventional
because
media
you are a
project,
gambling
like a comic
addict.
book or a cartoon or a movie or all of the above.
We have planned the creation of a series of comics dedicated to the Pixel Girl. The key image is static, or at least we think so now, but the squeaky girl is still a seductress, so the image of breasts will be presented in various variations that our community will approve. Let's imagine there are 5,000 NF tits holders. There is a 30 million market of comics lovers in the US. On average, every comics lover spends around 20 USD per comic per week. It means $80 per month and $960 per year. The total addressable market is worth $28,800,000,000 USD. Let's imagine we take 1% of this market. It's 288 million USD per year on the base of monthly subscriptions raised in crypto. This is a cash flow.
Nice to see some active communication and appreciate the effort, as announced this afternoon, trying to resurrect this project into something successful. The only thing I would like to see, assuming the project can be successfully turned around, is to perhaps, in addition to some revenue sharing, have some revenue donated to breast cancer research. To truly enjoy them, we should keep them happy and healthy.
As already implied, many of them promise video games, often an MMO, but just as often, like, just the concept of a video game? Okay, wait, let me put that another way. They will promise a video game. Like, that's the promise. In its entirety. Genre, style, scope, engine, or platform, or how any of the tokens will interact. Just a video game. If we sell 10,000 tokens for $300 each, we will start brainstorming development ideas for a video game. Now, all of these tend to be in collections of 10,000, and there's actually an interesting sort of quirk inside that. The initial format was to build an entire collection and just shove them out onto the market. The cap comes into play purely because you have to tell the program generating the garbage and to stop. However, as the scheme started to take off and competition rose, it became obvious that this was a sucker's way of doing it because that meant paying gas fees on everything up front. So someone came up with a system for minting a random outfit on demand, which shuffles the mint cost off onto the buyer. From there, it all took off like wildfire. Very low upfront cost, extremely low risk, plus it turns the entire system into a gacha game with different rarity for attributes. At best, these are all obfuscated gambling schemes, at worst, active scams. And the payoff of failure makes it extremely difficult to parse one of those from the other. World of Wojak only sold 20 tokens to 11 people and still pocketed over $5,000. From Camel Rider sold 114 tokens to 71 buyers and totaled $25,000. Metamon sold 722 of their 9,999 tokens to 343 buyers and walked off with $211,000. Since the average buy-in is over $350, the payday for failure makes it irrational to succeed. The interesting aspect of it all, though, is the emergent fiction of it. These smoke vendors don't have an actual product more complex than the output of a vending machine in the front of a grocery store, so they need a story to sell instead. And so we get this wave of poorly defined projects pitching a token with an attached JPEG that represents the concept of a thing that could become a future business. What that business does is unimportant, and indeed many of these projects, successful and otherwise, trade in a flattering myth of decentralization where the direction of the business, down to its fundamental product, is shunted into the indeterminate future to be decided later by collective consensus. Are we a comic book, a movie, a hedge fund, a casino, or a bi-monthly curated box of snacks? Well, that's for the token holders to decide. All that matters is that whatever it is, it will definitely make the value of your tokens go up. So you should definitely buy too.
One thing I learned about NFTs, if you think something's going to be a blue chip, you should definitely buy at least two, because you're going to get one emotionally attached to one of them. And you're not going to want to sell it, because NFTs are going to explode all over the world. And if you've got a blue chip today, it's going to be incredibly more valuable in 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, or 2 years from now than it is today.
On the front of otherwise respectable, or at least established brands and people getting into NFTs, the results tend to be extremely tepid and insubstantial, even by the standards of NFTs. Very low risk, low quality, low engagement tokens shoveled out the door to capitalize on a hot buzzword, chasing the cash that's sloshing around. Tied up in all this, there's an extremely pervasive resistance to any form of skepticism that ultimately manifests as a sort of toxic positivity. This is all part of a complex feedback loop. The projects, broadly speaking, lack any kind of substantial product, consisting almost entirely of promises backed by nothing more than a screenshot of a roadmap and some sample PFPs. And again, I think it's really important to keep in mind that that goes for successful projects just as much as for rugby. There really isn't any meaningful difference between a billionaire club and a betting Kongs. Betting Kongs were never going to make a casino, even if they had intent, and despite the fact that they were running billboards in Times Square, the ABC is never making an MMORPG. Both claims are completely ridiculous, but one of the two made a huge pile of money. The primary product is ultimately hype, which is both insubstantial and fickle. Negativity, both internal and external, can have a meaningful impact on the willingness of people to buy into a project. And if buyers are tepid, then you won't get a runaway sale. And if you don't get a runaway sale, then that's going to turn off buyers even more, which means the secondary market for tokens will likely fail to materialize. This is what makes enthusiasts so deeply unreliable. They have meaningful financial stakes in an intangible, volatile thing that exists entirely as a collective idioform, a story about a potential future outcome whose value is based entirely on public perception. You can't trust what they have to say because they're currently holding a hot potato. And as much as they insist that they just really, really enjoy the feeling of a burning hot potato in their hands, do they? Or are they just hoping that you'll catch it? This creates an environment of toxic positivity where doubt is aggressively policed by both project leaders who have an obvious financial interest in hype since their big payday is the minting rush, and community members themselves who have a speculative financial interest in hype. While all of that is logical in the pure sense that there's an effect that can be explained by an incentive, the output is effectively a self-organizing high control group. Doubters are ostracized so aggressively that it chills all conversation about a project's actual viability. All concerns are just FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Questions that would be utterly banal in any other investment forum: what has the team done? What assets do they have? Why should anyone believe that they can deliver on their promises? Are treated as hostile. And the frank reality is because there aren't answers. Party A Billionaire Club is just as vaporous, and yet they superficially succeeded. So there's incentive to enforce the collective illusion. This is multiplied by an internal form of performative etiquette. Participants ritualistically wish each other good morning and good night, boiled down to the shorthand GM and GN. That seems like a small thing. There's nothing inherently suspicious about good morning or good night, but in observed practice, it is a distinct ritual. Not merely a shibboleth, but a repetitive action that signals in-group membership and affirms loyalty on an ongoing basis. If you have diamond hands, it means you're willing to hold a token until some promised future where the value goes to the moon. You're not a paper hands loser who is easily spooked by instability, volatility, or the fact that there's no reason to believe that anyone is ever going to want to buy a crypto astronaut in the future. The shorthand, WAGMI, we're all going to make it, is aphoristically bandied about even in openly zero-sum competitions where, by definition, most participants explicitly won't make it. But you can't point that out, because that would be FUD. And if you're spreading FUD, then you're NGMI, not gonna make it. And making it, getting rich, is all that matters. HFSP, have fun staying poor. These are synthesized into a no true Scotsman paradigm. The we in We're All Going to Make It does not refer to we all, it refers to the select, the chosen, the diamond hands and the hodlers. Those who make it are clearly the we. And if you didn't make it, then you weren't. People who get angry about being scammed by a rug pull, or by malware, or by social engineering are berated and belittled for not following the crowd. This incubates a community trained to ignore warning signs and dismiss criticism, a community with internal language and customs that are explicitly incompatible with outside communications. Skepticism is FUD from non-believers who are trying to undermine the value of your assets and manipulate a crash or trick you into being a paper hands. It all maps onto narratives of sin and deception, a chosen few who are privileged with advanced knowledge about the promised land, which they can achieve by holding strong to the rituals and expelling all doubt. The end product is a self-organizing high control group. And the results of that are obvious. There are still people convinced that somehow, someone is going to pick up the ashes of evolved apes and manifest the rest of the project, a belief based on no observable evidence. So the question then is, what do the tokens actually do? As mentioned before, the token itself is just a box that a bit of data can be put into. Now, this box is extremely small, to the point that even an average cell phone photograph is several times too large to fit. Due to the nature of the chain, updating software that's put onto the chain is both difficult and expensive. Complicated programs need to be broken up into multiple tokens, each containing a smart contract that defines a portion of the whole, and all of these contracts need to interlink and reference each other, but with an eye towards the fact that each transaction that either computes or alters information requires paying processing fees. Only reading information is free. The process of fixing a bug in a smart contract basically amounts to minting a new copy of the contract and then jumping through some hoops to rename the old and new contract so that the new copy has the name that any other interacting contracts are looking for, paying fees for just about every step of that process. This creates a very funny catch-22 where on one hand is the insistence that the NFTs that end users buy are potentially extremely powerful, able to be miniature self-governing applets that exist in a web of like applets, and on the other hand is a large stack of incentives to put as little into them as possible. For an example of the pitfalls, Wolfgame was a somewhat popular NFT-based gambling game that bragged about being hosted entirely on-chain at great expense. Everything from the pixel art wolves and sheep to the game's code was stored on Ethereum. The idea behind the game is that users would mint a character token which had a 90% chance of being a sheep and a 10% chance of being a wolf, with a finite supply of wolves and sheep available. The important thing here is that the character tokens weren't just a bit of art and a serial number, but tiny programs that allowed users to perform interactions like staking. The problem is that their code was full of multiple bugs, and since some of those bugs were contained in the character tokens, they were replicated across all 13,809 minted tokens. A glitchy token can't be patched. It must be replaced. So the Wolfgame devs were forced to not only redeploy all of their contracts, but attempt to remint and distribute identical copies of every chance of being a sheep and a 10% chance of being a wolf, with a finite supply of wolves and sheep available. The important thing here is that the character tokens weren't just a bit of art and a serial number, but tiny programs that allowed users to perform interactions like staking. The problem is that their code was full of multiple bugs, and since some of those bugs were contained in the character tokens, they were replicated across all 13,809 minted tokens. A glitchy token can't be patched. It must be replaced. So the Wolfgame devs were forced to not only redeploy all of their contracts, but attempt to remint and distribute identical copies of every token generated. It didn't go well. Given the risks inherent in putting functionality inside the token itself and the high cost of interaction, the most common application is to use external systems to simply check for possession of a token. This is where we introduce another player into the ecosystem. Wallet managers like MetaMask. In a few short years, the system has already grown so bloated and difficult to interact with that it's become necessary to develop middleware applications that simplify the process of generating wallets, switching wallets, and mediating handshakes between the wallet and external systems. From one point of view, these wallet managers are the golden key that makes it all work. They solve the single sign-on problem, allowing your web browser to simply know that it's you who is using it, automatically negotiating permissions based on relevant tokens. It's your login, your credit card, your Steam profile, and your bank account all rolled into a single point of contact, making interaction with Web3, the internet of the future, frictionless. From another point of view, it's a massive point of failure that contains so much information, so many permissions, so much of worth, that it becomes an extremely obvious point of attack, manufactured by idiots who claim to be building a security product in 2021 that doesn't obfuscate key phrases within the UI or use two-factor authentication. Remember, again, that these people want to put medical records, driver's licenses, professional accreditations, and real estate deeds into their system. They should not be trusted. The entire market is absolutely lousy with scams and has been since Bitcoin first gained any traction. Every single scam structure imaginable has been dusted off and redeployed into this explicitly unregulated market where victims are largely without recourse. These range from institutional scams like Ponzi schemes, pump and dumps, and insider trading to middleweight scams like gold, brick, and wash trading to grittier scams like phishing and sending fake links. Pump and dumps in particular are conducted in broad daylight. Since it's not illegal, it's just against the terms of service of the exchanges that you use to do it. So the worst case scenario is you burn your account. They'll straight up walk you through the process of doing a pump and dump, no code words, diagrams, and everything. They're notable as they're actually a two-headed scam because, you see, you might get recruited onto the pump half of the scheme, or you might think you're being recruited to pump, but you're actually the dump. As already mentioned, blockchain is resilient to direct man-in-the-middle attacks where someone tries to inject bad data straight into the chain, but man-in-the-middle attacks are rare. In an environment like cryptocurrency, with few, if any, repercussions for misbehavior that stays within the cryptosphere, man-in-the-middle attacks are wholly unnecessary. Why try to brute force your bad data onto the chain when you can trick someone into giving you access to their wallet, then transfer all their stuff out? Every smart contract becomes a self-rewarding bug bounty where the payout is whatever apes and coins you can grab before anyone notices. And that's not even touching on the subject of malware. Smart contracts are just code. They're software. There's no reason they can't be viruses or worms. The primary limitation is processing power. But also, it's a virus that someone can drop directly into your bankless bank account and just wait for you to activate it. And yeah, that's right. There's no offer/confirmation step in sending tokens back and forth. Someone who knows your wallet can just drop stuff right into it. So, pin that somewhere in your brain. The best part about this is that the whole ecosystem operates on a strict assumption that possession is ownership and access is permission, which is absolutely buck wild coming from software developers who claim to be very concerned with system security. If someone tricks you into sending them your Bored Ape, it's now theirs. The only mechanism in the machine for parsing legitimate transactions from illegitimate transactions is the consensus mechanism, which is only concerned with whether or not the transactions follow the rules of the software. The only illegitimacy it recognizes are people trying to insert fake data. When you are tricked into doing something, all of the mechanics of what follows are, by the rules of the system, legitimate. It's a legal transfer. More relevant, however, is the sheer density of these scams. The one market that cryptocurrency has successfully disrupted is the market of fraud. Think of it this way. A big population of people have willingly self-identified that they have substantial disposable income, poor judgment, low social literacy, a high tolerance for nonsensical risk, and are highly persuadable. People who fall victim to these scams have basically no options other than taking to social media and attempting to whip up enough of a frenzy that they can convince marketplaces like OpenSea to act as de facto censors by delisting stolen tokens. There's no authority you can report them to that has the power to return your tokens. The best you can hope for is denying the scammers profit on their incredibly low-cost operation. If your business is tricking people out of their money, you would be a fool if you didn't take the opportunity. Not only have participants advertised their susceptibility to incoherent promises of future returns, the immutable structure of the chain, the persistence of data, and the ease with which that data can be collated means that for scammers, it's extremely easy to find marks. Every Discord for a rug pull NFT project is a roster of potential victims. The ledger of bakeholders is a shopping list of targets. The Twitter account of anyone complaining about what they lost on Evolved Apes is the low-hanging fruit of a very ripe orchard. And that's a pretty good segue into talking about privacy issues. A low-trust environment is also a low-privacy environment. Anything you do on a blockchain is, by design, accessible to everyone who knows how to navigate the data. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that the opposite of how it's supposed to work? I thought crypto was all anonymous. So, yes, crypto is anonymous by default. There's no inherent requirement for proof of identity, and in fact, numerous applications that would benefit from a stricter one-to-one correlation between accounts and people struggle with this. On forums and social media, it's called sock puppeting. In crypto, it's called a Sybil attack, where users are able to generate numerous alternate identities by creating additional accounts or wallets. The epidemic of wash trading on OpenSea relies on the ability to pretend you're several different people as you buy apes from yourself for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Rather than anonymous, this is pseudonymous. Everyone can see what wallets and contracts your wallet interacts with based off the long hash addresses like this, but that hash is only implicitly connected to your identity based on circumstantial connections. Of course, a big circumstantial connection would be something like registering with a crypto-based social auction platform that intrinsically connects the two. This makes it pretty easy to see that Lena Morris, overly attached girlfriend, paid $153 on March 31st to mint the overly attached girlfriend NFT, followed by a $205 reserve on April 2nd to list the NFT on Foundation. Ethereum whale Farzan Fard then bought the token on April 3rd for 200 Ethereum, 30 of which went to Foundation, with Lena getting the remaining 170, which she transferred into USD using the exchange service Kraken in a block of 105 on April 4th and a block of 65 on April 22nd for a combined total payout of $374,726. After her sale, Zoe Roth transferred the Ethereum to dollars via Coinbase the next day and hasn't touched the wallet since. Kyle Craven minted several other tokens, but for the most part just split the Ethereum from the initial sale into two separate holding wallets where it's sat untouched since. You don't need to be some super hacker to figure this stuff out. It's all publicly available. That's the entire point of the system. And in another feature not bug arrangement, remember, nothing can be deleted from the blockchain without tremendous effort. Now, that's fine if the blockchain only contains a contextually relevant log of transactions. There are absolutely contexts where that level of transparency is desirable, but that falls apart when you start talking about using the blockchain itself as the storage medium for, like, an entire social network. Blockchain-based social network Scuttlebutt seems tacitly aware that this is a bad idea, like somewhere inside their human brains they recognize that it might be a mistake to make it impossible to remove things from the system when they warn users that anyone willing to dig can surface any old usernames, photos, and bios, but that doesn't actually give them pause. So, if someone posts, say, child abuse imagery, revenge porn, your home address, intimate details of your private life, there's just nothing you can really do about that. If you mistakenly overshare, post some information that maybe you shouldn't have, it's already too late. You can try to hide it, but you can't delete it. Remember that if someone knows your wallet address, they can just put tokens directly into it. As alluded, there's a whole scam where you drop someone an NFT that lifts the art from who cares, somewhere, but the smart contract is malicious code that drains their wallet if they ever interact with it to move it, sell it, stake it, burn it. It just becomes a landmine sitting in their wallet forever.
Yo, this is fake, this is fake, this is fake, this is fake. They popped up in my wallet, I clicked on it to delete it, immediately they stole 19 grand. Happily, I just started this wallet, they already stole 19,000 out of it. Please fucking help me immediately.
Even on the non-malware side of things, people have already been using this to dump promotional tokens into the wallets of celebrities and influencers, but you know dick pics are an any second now kind of thing, right? Oh look, I minted a photo of your front door and dropped it directly into your wallet. And you can't just, like, delete it, you need to actively send it somewhere and pay gas fees to do so. Revolutionary new vectors in harassment. The end product here is a massive power imbalance that's baked into the fabric of how you engage with this new world order. Users who engage with the system authentically as themselves expose vast swaths of information about themselves and their activities, while users who engage disingenuously are empowered in their ability to deceive, defraud, and disappear. A lot of this rhetoric stems from a pretty deep failure to understand what a central authority really is, or that you can decentralize data storage while centralizing data. Ethereum is ultimately a central platform, and the fact that a few dozen people need to sign off on every major change before it can be implemented is largely meaningless and symbolic, with the validation network ultimately sitting somewhere between consortium and cartel. Every large platform has multiple internal and external stakeholders that form a consensus about the direction of the platform. Windows is not a single-minded monolith. Apple issues voting shares. Google is basically a hydra. While the network of Ethereum miners and validators are not a formal corporation yet, there's no mechanism in existence that compels them to act in the interest of users, particularly poor and disempowered users, where those interests conflict with their own. The movement of Ethereum from proof of work to proof of stake has been vaporware in no small part because the validators simply choose not to. Because proof of work, volatility, and high gas fees benefit them in the here and now, while proof of stake and low gas fees only benefit them in a hypothetical future. Because these extremely obvious pitfalls are what you get when you let guys like Vitalik Buterin and Elon Musk design the future. The sole protection for users of Ethereum is that the system is so cumbersome that all but the most egregious breaches aren't worth addressing. Of course, that in truth means that only the wealthy have access to justice within the system. If you take all these different things, all these parts of your identity, all your economic activity, all the video games you play, all the groups you join, and stick them into one system, that's a central system. It doesn't matter how many different servers that system spans or how many validators need to agree before changes can be made. You've pooled all that data in one place. The proposed Web3 crypto-driven future of the internet is a privacy disaster. This is why I find MetaMask horrifying as a product. It's a bucket that's asking you to pour unfathomable amounts of data and permissions into it. It's such a tremendous and monumental point of failure. And this is where NFTs really bloom into their final form. The primary use case of tokens, beyond speculation, ultimately is to function as access passes. From a web engineering perspective, imagine tokens that are the mother of all cookies and consider a tracking token that users don't just willingly associate themselves with, but enthusiastically drag with them from device to device, ensuring a continuity of tracking across all web activity. The future version of the web, built on the back of cryptocurrency and mediated by financialized tokens, is a dystopia. It's a technology that's built to turn everything into money, to treat every corner of our social existence as a marketplace, to attach an abstract representative token to everything from video games to labor unions. Now, proponents of Web3 will disagree with this assessment, particularly the claim that cryptocurrency is endemic to Web3 and that you are intractable, but that's the practical reality of the situation. Every substantial project branding itself under the banner of Web3 is strapped to the side of a blockchain, be it issuing governance tokens or relying on the chain's smart contract layer or requiring possession of a cryptocurrency in order to pay the processing fees that are mandatory in order to participate. They are, at this point, philosophically and technologically entwined. Less accessible, less free, less interesting, and substantially more expensive, Web3 is the vanguard of a million paywalls and oppressive, code-enforced DRMs sold to idealists as a centralized system where they and not wealthy stakeholders have the power. I see tremendous blind spots in a community that has spent so long focusing on the hype of an untenable fantasy metaverse where they're the ones cowing corporations with equal ownership guaranteeing their ability to sell gear for the horse armor, that they fail to consider that the enforcement of ownership can and will be used against them if and when corporations decide to leverage their power in this space. The fantasy amongst evangelists is that a tokenized economy where digital goods are mediated by NFTs would give them more power. Goods like digital games would have true ownership encapsulated in the ability to be sold, but there is no reason to believe that this is how things would shake out. The far more probable result is that the tokens are used to lock products down even tighter. The Squid Game token scam is illustrative here. In early November 2021, a new meme token popped up styled after the hit Netflix show Squid Game. Over the course of about a week, the price of the token went up from 5 cents to just under $3,000 US. Estimates are that the Squid developers took in about $3.38 million before cashing out their holdings, deleting their socials, and vanishing into thin air. A classic rug pull, but the truly transcendental detail is that it left buyers with not merely a useless token, but a token that couldn't be sold at all. Built into Squid was a requirement that in order to transfer or sell the tokens, a corresponding number of marbles tokens needed to be spent at the same time. The hitch was that marbles were never available. No rules were broken in this scam, and indeed the Squid tokens do exactly what they say they do. If you have the appropriate amount of marbles tokens, you can absolutely transfer or sell your Squid. Just good luck getting any. A game developer can, in any of myriad ways, deliver on a truly owned digital token that is rendered untradeable in practice, and all by playing by the rules. Rules must always be evaluated for their power to oppress. This is a blind spot to crypto enthusiasts because they just assume that they're the early adopters, they're the ones who will have power, they're the ones who will get to set the rules, and they're the ones who will do the oppressing. Consider that any token that can be used to grant access can also be used to revoke it. Like Let's say that I create a hangout spot in one of the metaverse contender platforms, Decentraland, and we call it the Ahigao Alpaca Oasis. The Oasis has a back room that only allows registered players to enter, meaning you need to have your MetaMask linked to Decentraland in order to get in. This type of gate is typically used to create VIP areas, places where only people who hold a specific token or class of token can enter. Only people with official Ahigao alpacas can enter. But, as is well known within the lore of the metaverse, the Ahigao alpacas have long been at war with the Bored Ape Yacht Club, so rather than checking for an alpaca token, I check for ape tokens and then forbid entrance. Or maybe I just make my game artificially more difficult for them, or inflate my prices. Now imagine that instead of running a hangout spot in a video game, that I'm a decentralized finance organization giving out mortgages in cryptocurrency, and I scour your transaction history for donations to the NAACP as part of my risk assessment protocol. Imagine that Nestle is able to track unionization efforts in real time because the union is issuing governance tokens on a publicly auditable blockchain. The belief that the world will be fairer if the rules are enshrined in code enforced by computers and made extremely difficult to change or circumvent is laughable. It's not merely naive, but categorically ahistoric. This is where a lot of my resistance comes from. You can create specialized crypto chains that have a negligible environmental impact, but the force of that model is culturally destructive. The current system sucks, but this is just a worse version of the current system. It doesn't even stop then. It's tokens all the way down. Like, okay, Axie Infinity is a so-called play-to-earn video game based on Ethereum, but because Ethereum is too slow and expensive to interact with directly, the developers, Sky Mavis, created a side chain called Ronin, which consists of a governance currency called AXS, the game character tokens called Axies, and the in-game currency called Smooth Love Potions, or SLP. All of these components are built to function as money because that's what the machine is built to do. The so-called play-to-earn model is a great case study in what the end result of the crypto ecosystem actually looks like. Axie Infinity gets a lot of credulous coverage from the press because a handful of people in the Philippines are able to make a marginal living by playing the game and flipping their SLP, which lets Sky Maven turn around and pretend that they're a humanitarian organization and not a for-profit business who makes money off all the people rushing to buy a team of Axies, believing that they can get paid just for fun. Now, real quick, Axie Infinity is a lightweight card-based PvP game where players fight with a team of 3 critters called Axies. It's a bit Pokemon and a bit Slay the Spire. Axies have randomized attributes and are all tokenized, so if you sell an Axie, you're selling that specific Axie. Smooth Love Potions are used to breed Axies and thus form the basis of the economy as they are fungible relative to the Axies themselves. Matches are either ranked or unranked, but only ranked matches entered using energy, which recharges every day, can earn SLP. The amount of energy you have to work with depends on the number of Axies in your wallet and ranges from 1 to 60. Additionally, higher ranked matches are worth more SLP. More SLP means a bigger stable of Axies, which means more energy to play matches, more flexibility within the metagame, better team compositions, and baseline better stats, enabling easier wins. So the difference in earning potential between higher and lower ranked accounts is pretty substantial. What coverage tends to note and then quickly move on from is the fact that the game is extremely expensive to onboard, costing hundreds of dollars to assemble a basic team, which has led to the rise of what are euphemistically called scholarship programs. Businesses like Whale Scholars that set up a large number of accounts give players access to the game account, but not the underlying wallet, and then pay players a split of the SLP the account generates. Whale Scholars and other mentorship businesses retain full control of the wallet and thus the Axies, the SLP, and any AXS. It's capitalism in its rawest form. Players invest their time into grinding SLP, and then the owners take half the returns. Players get to barely make minimum wage, while the owners, who are taking 50% from dozens, if not hundreds of players, get to speculate on digital land.
Look what the Whale Scholars just got. We have land in the Arctic, baby. We have Arctic land.
Axie's energy system is fundamentally broken in how it promotes this exact middleman arrangement. If you have 21 Axies in your wallet, you can create one account that has 60 energy at its disposal, or you can create 7 bare minimum accounts with 20 energy each. A high-ranked account with 60 energy will dramatically outperform a single low-ranked account with 20 energy, but 7 accounts that are played daily by other people is far and away the best ROI because it involves doing basically nothing except collecting your cut. Even more illustrative, between August and October 2021, the internal economy of Axie Infinity crashed. Not absolute rock bottom, but bad enough that all but the highest ranking players fell below the average daily wage in the Philippines, with low-ranked players falling below minimum wage. Navic, a think tank and consulting firm that does deep research on game economy, has done a pretty deep and thorough analysis of the Axie economy, and in their write-up, they identify the core source is psychological. Players aren't playing to play the game, they're playing to make money. They treat the game as a job, and thus have little interest in the game items for their own sake. Once they have enough stuff to cover their job, they stop reinvesting and start cashing out. The price of low-quality Axies, the ones that new players are likely to buy in order to onboard for the lowest cost possible, is propped up entirely by players buying them roughly at the same rate they're generated. This requires either mentors to be scaling up their teams by buying Axies instead of generating them, or new players injecting new money into the ecosystem by onboarding. But the more players that are playing, the more SLP and Axies that will be generated, thus the fundamentally unsustainable economic model where an infinite supply of new players must enter the ecosystem forever purely to keep the price stable. If it tips one way or the other, you either get runaway inflation or runaway deflation. This happens all the time in games. Games bork their internal economy constantly. It just doesn't normally matter because you're talking about completely fictional gold or gems or dragon bones. A truly stable economy isn't even desirable from a gameplay standpoint anyway. Gentle inflation ends up helping newer and more casual players by driving down the cost of things in the in-game economy, which lets those players participate and have fun. Of course, if your pitch is play to earn and not play to have fun, where the optics of buoying up the fictive valuation of your company rest entirely on the assumption that players can earn, then that's a bit of a different incentive set, isn't it? More people play Axie Infinity to try and make money than play it because it's a game they enjoy. This is a fundamental flaw in the model. If you pitch your game based on earning potential, you are going to attract people seeking to industrialize your platform faster and in greater numbers than would otherwise play. This is exactly the parasitic situation that games for decades now have been actively minimizing because it creates vicious negative externalities. If players can sell their in-game stuff, then it changes the way that they play the game. It changes the way that they optimize their playtime. Since the vast majority of games are openly a non-investment, a straight exchange of money for entertainment, also known as a purchase, players tend to optimize their playtime for intangible returns like fun, distraction, socialization, relaxation, challenge, achievement, and narrative fulfillment, with absolutely no expectation that the money and time they put in should return anything other than those things. The key shift here, and the meaningless buzz phrase that you'll encounter online, is the proposition that the results of playing a game should retain value, which is code for having a potentially speculative price. In order to try and keep the grift mill running for another few months, SkyMaven have tweaked the economy to reduce the amount of SLP players can earn per hour. It's a nightmarishly thin edge to be walking on, and the main thing it has managed to accomplish is enabling an entire strata of pit bosses running teams of players grinding out smooth love potions. And, like all bosses, they have not taken the downturn in stride and have instead started cracking the whip.
We do not accept mediocre gaming anymore. Need at least 120 to 150 SLP a day, and those who yield more will be rewarded with additional percentage. I prioritize those who have gaming experience. We have a separate program for charity.
Evangelists like to point to this as though it's inspiring. People in economically disempowered countries able to make a meager living by simply playing a video game. I reject that framing. It's horrifying. Our global system is so fundamentally unjust that people are patting themselves on the back for generating a whole new kind of online ooh-woo pit boss who tells you to grind harder or you're fired, but caps it off with a blushy emoji. Ooh, Oopsie, looks like someone didn't meet their quota. This sucks. I think the thing that normies don't get about NFT bros is their dedication, the staggering volume of capital they already control, and how deeply rooted they are in the culture of the people who operate the platforms we all use every day. And that alone is a good reason for people to pay attention. They have a lot of money and a lot of clout that they can use to try and make fetch happen. This is something of a splitting point. Basically, the future shakes out in one of two broad ways. One is that some new technological buzzword comes along and blockchain and Web3 lose their sway over investors, the stream of new buyers dries up, and the early investors cash out as best they can, popping the whole bubble. The other is that they're successful, and cryptocurrency is able to crowbar its way into enough corners of our lives that it becomes unavoidable. We're all forced in some way to maintain a crypto wallet, to manage whatever coins and tokens become necessary for participation in society, providing early investors with a captive audience and steady flow of capital. To quote German socio-technologist Jürgen Guter, better known by his online alias Tante, there are parts of your digital life that currently you can't really sell, but that's what they want to change. Everything needs to be bought and sold. Everything is just a vehicle for more speculation. The reason they want you to be able to resell your access token to some service instead of buying or renting it like today is to create even more markets for speculation, and the smart contracts can be set up in a way that at every corner they profit. The claims that this technology facilitates an immutable ledger of ownership is itself largely hollow posturing, even from within the ecosystem. Remember that most of the actual things being referenced are not contained within the chains themselves because the chains are too slow, restrictive, and bad at their job to actually store media, and because many of the things being sold are purely ephemeral. The IPFS address for any given media token can be effortlessly minted onto another competing chain, or even the same chain. That's not even right-click saving, that's referencing the exact same media. Why is the token on Ethereum more authoritative than the token on Tezos, or Cardano, or Solana, or Ergo, or Sila, or Binance, or Algorand, or Polkadot? Service, instead of buying or renting it like today, is to create even more markets for speculation, and the smart contracts will be set up in a way that at every corner they profit. The claims that this technology facilitates an immutable ledger of ownership is itself largely hollow posturing, even from within the ecosystem. Remember that most of the actual things being referenced are not contained within the chains themselves because the chains are too slow, restrictive, and bad at their job to actually store media, and because many of the things being sold are purely ephemeral. The IPFS address for any given media token can be effortlessly minted onto another competing chain, or even the same chain. That's not even right-click saving, that's referencing the exact same media. Why is the token on Ethereum more authoritative than the token on Tezos, or Cardano, or Solana, or Ergo, or Sila, or Binance, or Algorand, or Polkadot, or EOS, or Tron, or VeChain, or Ethereum Classic, or Bank, or Stellar, or Stacks, or Neo, or Wave, or Apollo, or Link, or Radix, or Harmony, or Oasis, or Icon, or Secret, or Iota, or Crown, or Terra, or Conqueror, or Enigma, or Elastos, or Edgeware, or Fido, or Thieves, or Gather. If a chain hard forks, which version of your stuff is the real one? Bitcoin is itself mired in a turf war between Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin SV. The myth of immutable ownership governed by these systems is predicated on a monolithic victor. In reality, your
45th in popularity. Just high enough